Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. Today on the show, we have Brian Hemedinger. Brian is a real estate investor, coach, and sales leader. After spending 13 years pursuing an acting career, Brian decided to transition into a successful sales and leadership career with an upscale fitness brand, eventually overseeing 30 locations representing over $300 million in annual revenue. Wrapped up in the rat race, or maybe just a slow learner, Brian eventually realized that contributing to a 401k and traditional stocks and bonds portfolio was a suboptimal strategy for achieving financial freedom. With the help of some mentors, Brian discovered the power of investing in multifamily real estate and is now on a mission to help corporate professionals take control of their investments and diversify into cash flowing, producing assets. Awesome. Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bob. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah. Great. So many places that I want to go with this. I have so many questions for you. So I think maybe a good place to start is tell us a little bit about how your acting career and then how you transitioned over to sales and what brought you here to investing in multifamily real estate.
Okay. Well, happy to. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I moved, as the bio says, I was an actor for about 13 years. So I moved from Buffalo to New York City just after college, went to graduate school for acting. And for those 10 years or so living in New York City, that's really what the focus was. My focus was being an actor. I was working some of the time, not working as an actor a lot of the time. So I was always doing other jobs to pay the bills. And did that for quite a while. And it was really who I was. It was my identity. If anybody asked me who I am, I'm an actor. I mean, it was just everything, all the energy that I had went into that. And then got to a certain point where I had recently gotten married. I was, I think, about 31 at this point. I was about $95,000 in debt from student loans and credit card debt. And something just shifted for me, where priorities shifted. I wanted more financial stability. I wanted to start to do something that I could put effort into and see a real tangible result from. So I took a job in sales for an upscale fitness brand. I'm still with that company today.
Okay, great.
And it was a super gratifying transition because suddenly I'm taking all that energy, all that passion, all that enthusiasm, putting it into the work that you do in sales. And I think you know something about that.
Sure.
And I was getting results from that, seeing success. So that was super exciting because that wasn't something that I was really seeing as an actor. And from there, that kind of opened my mind to other possibilities. So I started in sales, I got into leadership and have grown my career over the last 16 years with that company. And it's really been just a huge personal growth journey for me, making that transition and all the opportunities that have come up as a result of that. So that's kind of that part. And that's really what got me into business.
Okay.
And then probably about 5 years ago, I think I hit a realization where I remember one specific moment. I was at a Tony Robbins conference and it was called Life and Wealth Mastery. And we were sitting there, and one of the things they had you do prior to this conference is you would fill out this worksheet with all your income, your expenses, all your assets, et cetera. And then when you were at the actual conference, they produced a document that basically told you, based on where you're at, based on your current spending, based on your income, based on your assets, and what you're currently investing, when you would get to that point of what they called financial independence, where your investments could pay for your current expenses.
Okay. That sounds like a powerful tool.
It is a powerful tool, something that I think a lot of financial advisors do as well. Very similar kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there, we got it. And my wife was with me at the time, and she had left her teaching career already by that point. And we look at the thing and she's like, I feel pretty good. I feel like we're on track. And I was looking at it and I was like, yeah, we are on track if I want to continue to work full time until I'm 62 to 65 and not increase the cost of our lifestyle and hope that our investments in the stock market do well enough and are timed well enough. So when we get to that point where I want to retire, that I'm in a position to do so. I just felt like this is a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that was kind of a light bulb moment when I realized that I was relying 100% on the income that I got from my job. And I was really relying on the market to perform. And so that's where I really decided, okay, there's got to be other ways. And that's what really led me to real estate. And as it mentioned in my bio, I could be a bit of a slow learner. So it's been a slow process to get to the point where I started to take real action in terms of investing in real estate. But I'm very happy to be at the point where I'm at and to be on a trajectory at this point.
Wow. Wow. So much to unwrap there. That's great. That's a great story. So interesting. I guess a few questions I wanted to follow up with you, or just comments. It's interesting. And you mentioned that, working in a sales position, I also work in a sales position as my full-time job. And when I transitioned to sales, I had always had desk jobs before. Before I was in sales, I was sort of administrative desk type positions. I worked in benefits and human resources. And when I moved into sales, the biggest reason that I moved into sales, I wanted to learn selling because I was interested in the idea of becoming more of a business person. And also for my real estate investing interests, I just felt like learning sales would be very important. But along the way, I realized that one of the cool things about sales is if you have the right mentality and you have the right mindset, you're really helping other people. And if you're helping other people, and I believe in the adage of the more people you help, the more you'll be taken care of. And I find that to be very true in the sales industry. And, from the fitness perspective, I mean, you're working in sales in a fitness location. So I assume that, a lot of your contacts, a lot of your sales are trying to help people to live a healthier lifestyle, right? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was critically important. And I think a big part of the successful transition to sales, because I never considered myself to be a salesperson, but I was very into fitness. I had been since I was 18, 19 years old, started working out, started to become more conscious of what I was eating, like all those things. And so when I decided to transition away from acting, fitness was a natural fit. And I was a little intimidated about sales because I didn't consider myself a salesperson. I just didn't want to be in a position to kind of push people to do something, that kind of hesitation. And I did find exactly what you said, because I believe so strongly in the product and what the product can do for this individual. And really just not just for their body, but just in terms of fitness and their commitment to fitness, just impacting every aspect of their life. That made it really easy for me to be passionate about it and to be really influential in my conversations with people, because I was just coming from what I felt was the right place.
Genuine place. Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. So the transition over to your interest in real estate, your interest in real estate investing, I guess really the catalyst of that was looking at, your financial situation and from the Tony Robbins situation, and realizing that what I think many people realize is that, yes, I'm in an okay position. Yes, things will be fine if I continue to do this for the next 20, 30, 40 years with no real change. And tell me a little bit about, I guess, how that felt. I mean, was that sort of a constricting feeling? Was it a feeling of maybe that you don't have control? I mean, did you want to take control? I guess, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, two really good words: constricted and really not in control. And that was it. It felt like I love my job. I still love my job. So I'm very happy to be doing what I'm doing. I'm very fortunate in that way. But in 2020, our clubs shut down.
Yes.
Thankfully, I continued to have a job, but it became very evident to me at that time that that is not a guarantee. If the company had decided to let me go, I would have completely understood, because we had no revenue coming in.
Mm.
Again, thankfully, there was things that I could do and add value, but that was something I realized too at that Tony Robbins conference, that I'm relying on an employer to basically support me, right?
Yeah.
I'm adding value to the employer, but I'm also relying on them to support me. So that was number one. And then number two is recognizing that I was not leaving myself options. I wasn't giving myself choices. And so that word you said, constricted, is that, okay, I'm on this path, but it doesn't really leave me much room to deviate from this path.
Sure.
And the control piece is exactly what you said. That's the question that it kind of raised in my mind, is what can I take direct control over that will give us more choices, more options, more flexibility?
And that brought you
real
to
estate was a logical thing for me, because one, I've lived in real estate, right? So like I could understand. I've lived in apartments, I've lived in houses. Like it made sense to me, the sort of the physical asset, and have had at that point owned condos and sold condos, and even had a renter at one point. So I had some experience with that. And then when I got turned on to multifamily, it made even more sense, because when I recognized multifamily is really just a business, and you're buying a business that's generating a certain level of revenue and has a certain level of profitability, and your opportunity is to figure out where is the opportunity with this business, where's the opportunity to optimize it. Then I was like, oh, this isn't that different than running fitness clubs. Really, this isn't that different than running other businesses. It's a fairly simple concept, maybe not simple to execute, but simple to understand. And that's why I really got turned on to multifamily, for that reason.
Well, interesting, very, very interesting. And yeah, and as you know from our conversations, most of my real estate investing experience has been on a residential level, and I'm in the process now of transitioning over to the larger multifamily opportunities, and that is something that I'm learning. In the residential, in the smaller residential world, it's a lot of the work is individual. You do it on your own. You bring the capital to the table on your own, right? It's usually your financing, your money, your down payment, less partners. And now that I'm learning more and more about multifamily, I'm like, man, I should have done this a long time ago. But the idea of, first of all, yes, from a financial perspective, banks look at it as a business. And is it a business that makes sense? Yes or no? And then there's a team, right? We create this team around the opportunity, and for whatever responsibilities and roles are needed, then we're going to make sure that we have the right player, the best player on that team. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic versus what you look at in the residential world.
Yeah, and I think it's super intimidating. I know I didn't even consider it when I started to really dig into real estate. I was actually looking at wholesaling first. And because that looked like, hey, that's a great place to start, right? And then from there, I didn't really go into wholesaling, but I was like, okay, well, I can start with some single family. And a friend and I were looking at single family for a while. And then I went to a meetup where there was a gentleman there that kind of gave an overview of multifamily, and he just presented it in a way that it just clicked for me. And it suddenly opened my eyes to the possibility that, okay, so I don't have to really start in single family, for one of the reasons you mentioned, because you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
You're playing a role as part of a team, and you're leveraging your strengths, and then you can leverage the strengths of other people, and all together you collaborate and make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So during that process, can you tell me a little bit about where there are things that, obviously it's a transition, right? You're not even transitioning out of one position and into another, but you're transitioning from your normal state of affairs was to work in this fitness club, and now you're looking at multifamily investing. What was outside of your comfort zone? What sort of things did you encounter that you felt like really stretched your comfort zone or required you to overcome some of those fears?
So much. and it continues to.
Yes, yes.
It's such a journey. So I would say the first thing was, the first thing was the thing that I needed to do the most, and it was very uncomfortable, and that is getting around other investors.
Yes.
And immediately just that imposter syndrome thing just made me resistant to do it. But it has been the most important thing that I've done. And one of those things was joining a mentorship coaching program with Jake and Gino. And that was super uncomfortable for me for a couple of reasons. One, the fear that, hey, what if I do this and then don't end up doing anything, right? The fear of not following through. And then two was, joining this thing around other people that are farther along than me. What value do I have to offer them? All those thoughts come in. But as soon as I started to do that and to get around other investors, I realized, wow, this is so powerful, because now I can see myself more as one of them. I can start to identify more as an investor, and it holds me more accountable to taking consistent action. So that's number one. And then, number two, which I think is something I continue to work through, is really adopting an entrepreneurial mindset, because I am an employee. I've been an employee. I grew up in an employee household, and it's really difficult for me at times to really see myself as an entrepreneur, see myself as a visionary, see myself as someone that has what it takes, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Wow.
to execute and to really scale a business. And, the way that I work through that is just taking it one step at a time, like not worrying so much about the end outcome, but just saying, okay, well, what's the next step I need to take? Okay, well, can I do that? Yes, I can. So take that step. Okay, then what's the next step I need to take? And for me, that's what gives me gratification and along this journey, is consistently taking steps. Anytime I'm frustrated, it's because I feel like, hey, there's steps I could be taking that I'm not taking, and I know that they're within my power to take, and something's holding me back. That's where I get frustrated. As long as I continue to take steps and move forward, then I feel very energized in that process.
Wow. Yeah, it's very interesting that the things that you speak about. What I'm learning in the process of transitioning, and I'm in the same mentorship group as you with Jake and Gino. I think it's very common for us to come with the same discomforts. And I think so many people come in with a little bit of that imposter syndrome, right? Because you're joining a group of people who many of them have already done what you want to do. And so, do I belong in this group? I think joining a good community and sort of vetting out the community to make it feel like it's your people is probably an important part of that. And I think we've sort of found that. But comfort zone's a very interesting thing to me, because I strive to find where my comfort zone is and then go outside of it. A little anecdote. So Brian and I both participate in a Toastmasters group. And just last night on Toastmasters, they were looking for people to make a speech, and the words just came right out of my mouth. And I said, everything in me is telling me not to step up and do this. So that's why I'm going to step up and volunteer. And sometimes it's just about, as you said, taking that step, take the step, and then accountability, right? There's a certain amount of accountability to, okay, now in a group setting, I said, I'm going to do a speech next week. So now I'm accountable for the fact that I have to do a speech next week. And I think, similar to bring it back to multifamily, when you join a group and when you become a member of a group, and even in these deals, you become a part of a team. Sometimes we volunteer for, or we become, we have responsibility for things that are a little bit outside of our comfort zone, but that accountability really helps you to kind of bring it back into, to hold yourself true and to actually do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Wow. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, obviously this is the Healthy Investor Podcast. I really would like to talk a little bit about your maybe habits, routines? What do you do in your daily life that are maybe healthier habits and things that you feel really play a big part in successes in other parts of your life?
Yeah, this is a big one for me. So first off, I mean, the goal for me is always maximizing energy. That's the big picture goal. And because in a day-to-day basis, when you think about it, when you are energized, when you have high energy, it's like you can do anything. And when you're low energy, you become less resourceful. It starts to affect your thinking, or your thinking can start to affect your energy, however you want to look at it. But there's such a distinction between those two states, a high energy, resourceful state and a low energy, low resourceful state. And so the habits that I have in place are really designed to help me maximize energy. So for me, morning routine is huge. I love it.
Okay.
And it's just critically important. So for me, I get up, I meditate. Well, first, actually, I do some Wim Hof breathing.
Oh, okay.
Which is about a 12 to 13 minute, 3 rounds of this Wim Hof breathing exercise, where you basically practice holding your breath. And that is amazing. It just clears my mind, because you're doing something physiological, which then affects the physiological, then affects the mental. So it totally clears my mind. Then I go into meditation, because I find that breathing just prepares me so well for meditation.
Okay.
I usually do a Joe Dispenza meditation. There's a few that I like kind of rotate through.
Mm-hmm.
Then
about how long are your meditations?
Meditation is usually about 20, 25 minutes, depending on which one I do. And then the breathing is about 12 minutes.
Okay.
So in total, it's somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes, that period. Then, oh, by the way, I drink water. Before this, I always drink water. I always drink 2 of these with lemon in them. That's really important.
Okay.
And then after the meditation, then I journal. So usually just 1 page. I would usually start with these 5 things that I'm grateful for. I'll try to think of things from the day before, or things in the moment, not just always the same things, but even smaller things that I'm just noticing in the moment. And then move into just whatever's on my mind, just kind of free form journaling, whatever kind of thought question is kicking around in my mind, or just stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I will read, and usually I'll read for anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes a day in the morning. Sometimes it's a business book, sometimes it's a real estate book, sometimes it's more of a personal development book, but I read. And then after that, I work out, and sometimes I work out at home. Oftentimes I work out at the club, because I work in a fitness facility. So very convenient.
That's a nice advantage there. Yeah,
yes,
sure.
Exactly. And then of course, breakfast and all that stuff. But that's really the morning routine. So for me, that's a good, I mean, when you really take it from, let's just assume I work out at home, so you don't have the travel time.
Sure.
That's usually about 3 to 3.5 hours total, all those things. So I just kept getting up earlier and earlier because I wanted to add more to it.
That's a pretty significant morning routine. I love it. So what I really like about your morning routine is that you really focus on getting your mind right first. And I've found, I started probably in 2016, I started doing the Miracle Morning, which has very similar attributes to what you're doing, only you're doing on a longer time and a larger period. And I've since changed to my own version of morning routine. But I find that the mental portion, the getting your head right and getting your mind right first, is so important. Sometimes I find that if I skip maybe journaling or reading or, something like that, it's not quite as significant as if I skip my meditation. And, I've had people comment in the past, at work or in another environment, it's like, oh, you didn't meditate today, did you? And what's interesting for me, and I don't know how it affects everyone, obviously, but for me, meditation helps me to get my mind right, but it also helps how I cannot control what happens to me throughout the day. I can only control how I respond to it. And I feel like when I start my day off with getting my mind right, then my reaction is significantly more level-headed, smooth. I'm thinking on all cylinders, and it's amazing to me because I meditate about 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, and it's amazing how that 10 to 15 minutes has such an impact on the rest of the day, the entire day. And so it's interesting to me that you work in a fitness environment, and obviously the physical portion is important, and keeping yourself healthy and moving and active is important. But it's very interesting to me that the first thing that you prioritize is getting your mind right, and really getting your focus and your mind in the right place.
Yeah. And one of the things I notice is once in a while, so as I mentioned, I drink water first.
Sure.
So there's a few minutes of that happening. And once in a while, I always say, don't look at my phone. Like, don't look at my phone until after all that, at least after, not till after journaling. But once in a while, I'll be drinking the water and the phone, and I'll be like, all right, let me just take a glance at either news app or at my email. And I've just
came in.
Right.
I
just realized that when I do that, whatever it is, it gets in my head. And then now the breathing and the meditation is sort of working to undo what I just did.
Yes.
But if I do that stuff first, and then I check my email or I check my news, there's like nothing to undo, because my response to it is just completely different. So you kind of mentioned an interesting distinction in there, and it's a distinction that I refer to as reacting or responding. So when you've done your meditation, you're really no longer reacting. What you're doing is responding. Sometimes when something happens and you just kind of react, that's what you're doing. You're reacting.
Yes.
You're just kind of doing what's natural rather than responding, which is more like a thoughtful taking time and intentionally responding in a specific way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a night owl by nature. That's the story I used to tell myself. I'm a night owl, so I can't get up early in the morning. And when I changed to becoming a morning person, one of the things that I thought I needed to do, because life was like, stay up until as late as you can and watch those late night TV shows, and then get up the last minute you can in the morning to ensure that you'll still be at work on time, right? So what's the first thing I would do in the morning because I was sleeping late? Grab a cup of coffee. So when I switched to a morning routine and no longer watching those late night TV shows and all of those things, I thought, okay, well, I still have to grab that cup of coffee first. And you mentioned water, and water makes a huge difference. I can't have a cup of coffee before I meditate. It's like you're telling your brain two totally different things, right? But water just like sort of refreshes and starts the hydration process. And it's very interesting.
And one thing I just want to highlight too is because, sometimes people might be listening to this and me doing like a 3-hour thing in the morning, I'm sure sounds very unrealistic to a lot of people that maybe would like to be doing something. And I was never a night owl, but I had sort of the same mindset of like, okay, stay up as late as you can, get your sleep, and then just whatever minimum time you need in the morning to do what you have to do. Yep. and then get to work. And I started came back to another Tony Robbins thing, but I started with a morning routine after going to a Tony Robbins event, and it was just a 10-minute thing. He calls it priming, but it was just a 10-minute thing. And that's how that started for me. Yeah. It was just starting with this 10-minute thing. I said, I can make 10 minutes in the morning to do this. And then what I found was in just learning more, I added stuff naturally because I wanted to. Yeah. Right. But that 10 minutes did a lot of good. So for anybody that's kind of listening to be like, oh yeah, well, I'd like to do something. 10 minutes makes a difference. If you prioritize that 10 minutes and you do something really mindfulness based in that 10 minutes, it really does make a difference. And then maybe you find that you love it and you want to start to expand it, but you certainly don't need to start with 3 hours.
Yeah. In the book, The Miracle Morning, they talk about if you're in a time crunch or, instead of skipping it, I forget I think they call it the miracle minute, but the concept is, there's 6 things in the miracle morning, and it's, they call it savers, SAVERS, right? So it's silence or meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. And do one each for 1 minute, meditate for 1 minute, scribe for 1 minute, write a journal note for 1 minute, read for 1 minute. And then it's just really 6 minutes, right? Exercise for just 1 minute, just do a bunch of jumping jacks, but do something. And then turn it to 2 minutes, and then maybe 5 minutes, and then, fit yourself in. So yeah, when you said 3.5 hours, even I, who have been doing a morning routine for a good 5 or 6 years now, I was like, oh, that's a pretty big commitment.
Remember, that includes a workout. So
yes,
the workout's at least an hour plus of that.
Of course. Well, great. So I want to transition into our final questions, and they're the same questions that I'm going to ask every one of our guests. So for you, based on your experiences now, based on what you've seen, how do you define success?
I recently read a book called The EOS Life, which is Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction.
Yes.
And it's perfect for me. It's 5 things. So I'm stealing from that, but it just is perfect. It's doing something that you love to do with people that you love to do it with, creating an impact, getting compensated appropriately, and having time and flexibility for other passions. Like that to me is it. It's like so simple. And I read that, or I heard that, and then I read the book and I was like, I love this, just scaling it down to those 5 core things.
That's it. That's impressive. I like that. I really like that. I'm going to have to check that book out. You said it, EOS?
It's called The EOS Life. It's a small little book. It's a really easy read.
Okay, great. So my next question for you was going to be for someone who is new to investing, someone who is just starting out the journey, maybe moving into real estate investing. Do you have a book recommendation that you think would make a big impact?
Well, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course.
Yeah.
I read that early on. I know everybody talks about it, but it really is such a great mindset shift, that book. And I also think actually somebody from the Jake and Gino community wrote a book called Passive Investing Made Simple, Anthony Vicino and Dan Kruger.
Vicino, yes, absolutely. And Dan Kruger, yeah.
I love that book. I read that. Of course, I was already well into this journey, but I loved the simplicity of that book for someone that's really just starting to learn about real estate or multifamily specifically, and looking at it more from just a high level. I thought that book laid it out really, really well. So I think that's a great book too.
Yeah, I actually read that book before meeting Anthony and Dan. I had connected with him on LinkedIn, and he was releasing the book, and I just started listening to their podcast and read it. And, one of the things that I really like about their book, there are so many real estate investing books that you can find that talk about the active investor and how to be an active investor. And they look at it from a passive investor's side. And, when you talk about syndication, your limited partners, I haven't found any other book that really focuses on what they should be looking at. And, oh, by the way, how you should be treating them if you are the general partner. So yeah, really great book. That's a great recommendation. So I want to thank you, Brian. I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you taking your time out. I appreciate your friendship. You've taught me already a lot in our Toastmasters Club, and hopefully we continue those relationships. How can we support you? How can people reach out to you and contact you if they're looking to help you out or support you?
Yeah, a few different ways. The email is Brian, Brian, at maebarcapital.com, which is M like Mary, AEBAR capital.com. You can also just go to the website, maebarcapital.com. If we have a couple things on there, we have a Passive Investor 101 handbook, which breaks down a lot of the concepts and terms of investing. And then you can also subscribe to the newsletter there, which I send out usually once or twice a month. You can reach me on social media. I'm not super active on social media, honestly, but I do get the messages. So at B Hemedinger is my Instagram. And then I'm a little bit more active on LinkedIn, which if you just put Brian Hemedinger into LinkedIn, you'll find me there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. One final question I'd like to ask you before we wrap it up. If you could think back to a young Brian, ages 10 to 12, preteen years, going through life, curious, I'm sure, knowing what you've learned this far on the journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to young Brian or any preteen child to help guide them towards success?
Well, one is follow your passion. It's a simple one, but just so true. I'm so glad that I had parents, or have parents, that were supportive of me following my passion for acting, because even though that's not what I'm doing now, it is so much a part of who I am, and it informed so much of who I am today. So that would be 1. 2 would be whatever you're dealing with right now, it's going to be insignificant. So try not to get too hung up on any of those little things that you tend to get hung up on when you're a kid. And then let's see, what would be the third one? I think the third one would be try to find a way at an early age to be of service to others. It's something that really wasn't in my consciousness too much, but I think about it now and I'm like, I wish that I had done more as a kid to really put myself in service of others, and found more ways to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you coming on the Healthy Investor podcast.
All right. Thanks so much for having me, Bob.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.